Hello there, all you amazing people. We're going to talk about graphic cards, and are you buying the wrong graphic card because of the wrong, not the wrong information, but because you're interpreting the data wrong? So I'm going to do a little bit of an experiment with you guys in a little bit. But just like me, I guess everyone that wants a new graphic card, what do? We look at our wallet. What can we afford? And then we go look at benchmarks. What is the best card we can get for the price or the money that we have? And we look at benchmark bars, and if one bar is bigger than the other, that's the one that we are buying if we can afford it. What if I told you that should probably not be the most important thing, which bar is the biggest, because it's actually really deceiving. I am not going to tell you that the smaller bars are better. Of course the bigger bars are better, but there's a big but here. So let's look into it here. This is an experiment. I took this screenshot from the Ancient Game, I think it is. Will be a link to his channel down below, and I modified a little bit. What if I told you this was 3 different price groups of graphic cards, and each bar, this is a graphic card, this is a graphic card, this is a graphic card within this price group, this is a graphic card, this is a graphic card, this is a graphic card within this price group, and so on and so on. What if you looked at this, and let's say we the price group is like X to X amount of dollars, so like, you know, within, let's say $100, $200 plus minus $50 or something like that. You get the idea here. And you will be like, yeah, I'm buying that one down here. Or if this is your price group, this is the cheapest, middle, and most expensive. Like, oh, I can afford the middle group. Maybe I'm buying this one here. Don't look at this one up here being the biggest right now. Just like, oh yeah, if we reverse these, I don't know why he put them in this way, but if we reverse this here and say, well, this is the cheapest, this is the second most cheapest, and this is the most expensive. Okay, I can buy the cheapest one. Well, you go for the one with the biggest bar. Or I can do a mid-tier one, going from the one with the biggest bar. I'm going with, the most expensive one, going with the one with the biggest bar. So if you look at this bar here, let's look at the actually price group. This is the price group of these cars. This is like a $950 cards up here. This is like $780 cards. This is a $1,120 cards. This is just in Cyberpunk. There could be other price points, and you look at this here. Oh, well, apparently this one here is beating out this one here. If I get this car here plus minus $50, so that could be the $950 card. This here could be the $900 card, and this here could be a $925 card. We don't know. But if you look at this right here with no numbers, anything like that, and you say I have around $950, you will probably get this card down here. It actually outperforms everyone, so you would buy this one. What if I told you that this is just 3 cards? It's not even price groups. This is exactly 3 cards. This up here is a 7900 XTX. This is a 7900 XT, and this is a 480. This is the price group. Then you look at the numbers. And this is why you should look at the numbers and not the bars. This is the most expensive one. This is the stock clocks here, by the way. And this is overclocked, and this is overclocked with rebar basically enabled. If you look at it like this here, well, look at the numbers. Forget about how big the bars are, because you don't know what this up here, that could be 1 frame per second. It could be 2 frames per second. We don't know. You have to fucking look at the numbers. There is about the most expensive AMD card, overclocked and rebar and stuff like that, versus the most, or the 4, let me try again. The 7900 XTX overclocked and with rebar enabled versus the 480 overclocked and rebar enabled. There is 10 frames difference. Okay, what do you pay for those 10 frames? You pay almost $200 more, or well, almost $200 more. You say to yourself, well, in this game, this could be fluctuating. This is just one example. In one game, it could be that the 480 in another game is ahead. So again, thinking about here, okay, let's say I am going to buy the cheapest of these cars. That's this one here. There is about, I don't know, let's say 15 frames difference between the stock cheapest card and the stock 480. You know, if you take away the semicolons here, you know, there's 16 frames per second difference between in Cyberpunk a $780 card and a $1,120 card. Is it worth for you stock to pay this much money difference for 15 more frames? Is it worth that? Well, if you're only looking at frames, probably not. And you can also see here, the difference here is massive. If you look at at this gap here versus this gap up here, it looks big, but it's only 15 frames. I have opened up a game and lost 15 frames just because, I don't know, it wanted to lose 15 frames. And then I rebooted the game and I got 15 frames back. If we look at it up here, there's about 11 frames difference between these two here. If you look at this one and down here, we only have a couple of frames. What is the price difference? Almost $200. So you're basically paying $200 for like 2 or 3 more frames. And if you can kind of see when we're looking at it here, this bar looks actually quite a bit bigger than this one up here. Not massive, but quite a bit bigger. Again, if you're looking here at the, this is where it's really going into show you it here. Like I think this is the lower 1% tile here. Here we are talking about 9 different frames and see how big it is. Gap here. Here we are not even talking we're talking about 8 frames more on the lower 1%. Look at how big this gap is. So you could be thinking, I'm getting a massively, if I'm overclocking this card here, I'm getting massive amount of more performance. Getting about 10 more frames for overclocking. Spending probably 30 minutes an hour overclocking and finding stable. Get probably 10 more frames. I hope you can understand what I'm trying to say here. These bars, they are really good virtual representation of telling you which one is the best and blah, blah, blah. But if you actually look at the bar and you look at the gap between them, they can be really misleading. What you really should care about is the numbers within the bars. The bars is just telling you, if you do a clan say and say, I'm a Cyberpunk fanboy, I only fucking play Cyberpunk, which one is giving me the highest frames per second in this scenario up here with this CPU, then you can look at the bars and say, aha, this is the one. It's the one that sticks out the longest, that has the longest D. And then you can say, okay, what if I want to save a little bit of money? Oh, this is the next closest one. So here we are losing 20 frames per second. Now we start to talk a little bit. But if you look at this gap here, you should be thinking, I'm losing way more frames than 20 frames per second. Or even, what about if I don't want to overclock it? About 20 more frames per second also. But then if you were like, okay, I can buy this one up here, stock, a 950 card. But how does that compare with an overclocked 780 card? With the lower 1% is actually way better. And I'm getting 1 more frames per second. And I'm saving money. But if you look at the bars here, this seems to be equal. But you're actually gaining quite a lot when you think, oh, a little bit. Yes, look at the bars if you want like a really, really quick overlook at what are you looking for. What if look at the top 10 cards, for example. Which card, which bars are up in the top 10, and then look at what you actually are getting, because a lot of people, they pay way too much money than they need to for 1 more frame, 2 more frames, 5 more frames. It's not necessary. Most people don't even have a 144 Hz screen. Most people still game on 60 Hz screens. So all of these cards here, if you are 60 frames per second game, or even 100 frames per second game, all of these cards here is what you need. But you have to look at what is your refresh rate on your screen. What is the hardware that you're running? Can it push these frames? That's really crazy when you think about it, because people, they think bigger is better. It's not. It don't matter if you could run 3000 frames per second if you have a 30 fucking hertz monitor. Will those 30 hertz or those 30 FPS be massively stable? They should be, but not necessarily. So look at what your rig is. What can you afford? And look at the bar to guide you to where you want to be, and then look at the numbers. What happens if I go from here to here? From, let's say, here to here or here to here, and save, how much money do we save? Almost $200, if not more, and lose a couple of frames. 10 frames. I will gladly save $200. That's 4 games almost. That's 3 or 4 games you can buy for those money. And you have to think like that. What should you look for when you're buying a graphic card? What is the most important? Well, here we are looking at Cyberpunk. Go look at the benchmarks of the games you play the most. And then buy a graphic card if you're only a gamer. Buy a graphic card that do well in the games you play the most. Don't buy a graphic card because it's getting the best frames per second in Overwatch, never playing Overwatch. And then it's getting the worst frames per second in Cyber. Take the games you play the most, make a list, like the top 10 or top 5, and then the one you spend most time in, that's the one you preferably should buy hardware for. But let's take the top 3 or 4 or 5. You buy the card that do the best in all of those. You know, it may do better in one and not so good in the other, but overall it do better in all of these top 3 games. If you don't play Victorium or World of Warcraft or if you don't play a game, don't look at the bench. That's also why I hate these charts where they put, which one won overall more benchmarks or more tests. It's meaningless because I don't play 50% of those games. I don't care if I'm getting 10,000 FPS in CSGO. I don't play CSGO. I don't give a fuck about CSGO. Another thing that you have to think about nowadays, L prices, electricity is still kind of expensive in a lot of places. Well, it could actually be a good idea and look at how much frames per watch do you get. And then you also have to think about, am I doing anything else than gaming? Machine learning, AI, like is tensor cores important to you? Is CUDA cores important? Is the FIS AMD technology really, really important to you? Like OpenCL kind of things and stuff like that. That should also put into your decision. So if you're spending 8 hours a day working with machine learning and AI, well, tensor and CUDA cores are really, 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 really needed for you. And yes, you may buy a card that is good for that, but not that good for gaming. You have to look at what are you using your card the most for. Most people game, so that what kind of games do you play the most? Let's say another one, software stability. What kind of cards have the best software stability? You want to be playing your fucking games. You don't want to sit and fiddle and nerdle and be angry because now it crashed in this game and I can't get this to run and I have to do all of these config files configurations. You want to game. You want to use the fucking shit. So software stability. Another thing you also have to think about is software features. Do one set of graphic cards software suite provide you with things other ones don't? And then of course support. How is the community handling you? How is the company handling you? Build quality is another one you should look for. Don't just buy the cheapest of the cheapest. These prices here are the cheapest prices for these 3 cards right now today on Newegg. The cheapest you can get them for on Newegg. Looks. Are you willing to sacrifice 10 frames per second to get a graphic card that looks good in your build? Are you willing to lose 20 frames per second for the look of your graphic card? A lot of people say yes. If the performance in the game they play is to satisfaction. I don't care. So here, I have a 75 Hz monitor. It makes no sense to buy any of these 2 way more expensive cards, because I am not going to play games in 144 Hz. This one here will be way good enough for me. I don't do tensor or CUDA core intensive work at home. I don't need any of those else. The only thing that happens when I pay these cards, buy these cards here is they may last me 6 months to a year longer. But I'm paying, like in this case here, I'm paying a lot of fucking dollars for 2 or 3 or 1 or 1.5 longer lifespan. But I'm playing at 60 to 75 Hz. I would probably go with this one up here for Cyberpunk because it's closest to 100 in the lower 1%. That's how you should look at the use case. Don't just go out and spend all your money on the best card if your hardware don't support it. You're just basically wasting your money. I had my 1060, NVIDIA GTX 1060 for 1080p gaming since it released till February this year. And it was only the last 6 months I noticed that I really need a new graphic card. Yes, I had to lower some fidelity a little bit over the years and stuff like that. It started to run a little bit hot because it needed new thermal paste, what have you not. But I could still play to a satisfying degree under 1080p. If you're not having a 1440p monitor, don't look at benchmarks for 1440p. And you can get away with an even lower card. You could even probably, for a lot of games, if you're doing upscaling, a 4060 7600 could probably be good enough for you if you're playing 60 frames per second and 1080p, which most people actually are doing according to the Steam survey. So many people get too caught up in this. If you think that, okay, right now I'm having a low-end computer, the graphic card is the first step for me upgrading this low-end computer to a high-end computer, then you can start to say, like, what is the screen that I'm going to buy? In the perfect world, you should match your screen with your graphic card and your CPU. Your screen determines what graphic card you need. That's how you should think about it. I'm buying a 100 Hz monitor. How expensive do my graphic card needs to be for me to maintain 100 frames per second in high to ultra for the next 2 or 3 years? That's the card you buy. And then you buy the CPU that matches well with that card, if you're not doing anything else like rendering videos and stuff like that. Here's what most people do. They buy a 1080 crappy ass 60 hertz monitor, and then you go out and buy a 490 and pair it up with an i5 or R5. That's not unheard of, or they buy a 470 or the AMD equivalent. If they stick with 1080p 60 FPS, they could probably use this card for fucking a decade. And they more than likely would have upgraded since then, because there comes new technologies and this card don't support the new technologies. That's also something you have to think about. How long will I keep this card? When am I going to upgrade? If I buy a new graphic card each year, you don't need to buy the high end, the top end, even if you have like a 144 hertz monitor. If you're buying a new card each year, you buy the card that can play the games you want at 144 frames per second, preferably 200 frames per second, so you have some wiggle room, at least for a year until you upgrade next time. If you upgrade every second year, you buy the card that can maintain the frame rates that you are going to play at for 2 years. If you're falling into the benchmark trap, you are spending way too much money on stuff you don't need. And think about it like this. The money you save on a graphic card, you can use on a better CPU, better monitor, then you need a better graphic card properly. But you can get more games, clothes, more candy, more Mountain Dew, more hookers, you name it. I see too many people that know too little about hardware spending too much money on it. And it drives me nuts. When it comes to hardware, don't fall into the benchmark trap. Don't fall into the feature trap. Don't fall into this is the best of the best, because the chance are you're not utilizing all the resources on your computer. There's a lot of people right now playing okay, great games, but not really that intensive resource-hungry games on hardware that is unnecessary. They upgrade before the hardware that they bought actually is at the end of its lifetime, meaning that they can't play the games they want to play satisfyingly anymore. Like I said, I played on a 1060 since it was released till February this year in 1080p, and still could play most games in medium high mix, but I only played at between 30 to 60 FPS. I was happy with that, because that was my screens at that point. They were only 60 hertz screens. So if I get 65 stable frames, I was a happy camper. Then I had I have 5 frames buffer zone. Please don't get sucked into this. You are wasting your money away. So please don't waste money on the wrong graphic card. See you all later. Bye bye.